The human eye perceives that CO2 causes temperature to rise. However, when the temperature graph is superimposed over the CO2 graph, it becomes apparent that CO2 tends to follow temperature, not precede it, strongly suggesting that the CO2 does not cause the temperature to change, but the temperature causes CO2 to change. This point was made extremely well by London, England's Channel 4 in a documentary they produced called The Great Global Warming Swindle.
Well, here we're looking at the ice core record from Vostok, and in the red we see temperature going up from early time to later time at a very key interval when we came out of a glaciation. And we see the temperature going up, and then we see the CO2 coming up. CO2 lags behind that increase. It's got an 800-year lag, so temperature is leading CO2 by 800 years.
So obviously, carbon dioxide is not the cause of that warming. In fact, we can say that the warming produced the increase in carbon dioxide.
The ice core record goes to the very heart of the problem we have here. They said, if the CO2 increases in the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, then the temperature will go up. But the ice core record shows exactly the opposite. So the fundamental assumption, the most fundamental assumption of the whole theory of climate change due to humans is shown to be wrong.
Humans produce a small fraction in the single digits percentage-wise of the CO2 that is produced in the atmosphere.
Of the 210 billion metric tons of carbon emitted into the atmosphere each year, humans contribute only 6.3 billion tons, or about 3%. Other sources like vegetation, soils, and the ocean dwarf the amount produced by man. The importance of carbon dioxide is diminished even further by the never-mentioned fact that the overwhelming majority of all greenhouse gases is water vapor and clouds. Water vapor comprises approximately 97% of all greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide comprises less than 2%, and the balance is made up of methane, chlorofluorocarbons, and nitrous oxide. Many proponents of man-caused global warming claim that water vapor is highly variable across the Earth and from season to season, and therefore is unimportant. Additionally, they claim that CO2 has far greater potential as a greenhouse gas than its small amount would otherwise indicate. While there is some truth in these claims, water vapor remains the dominant greenhouse gas. The effectiveness or potential of greenhouse gases is highly variable due to a host of reasons. At any one time, water vapor accounts for 36 to 70% of the total greenhouse gas effects. If clouds are included, it jumps to 66 to 86%. Carbon dioxide comes in a distant third by accounting for only 9 to 27%. And remember, man's activities accounts for less than 3% of the total carbon dioxide, so at a maximum, man is responsible for less than 1% of all the potential greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We see the greenhouse power of water vapor every day. Temperatures in the desert can easily reach 110 degrees Fahrenheit during the day in the summer. During the night, desert temperatures can easily drop down to 65 degrees, a drop of 45 degrees. The change is so large because of the very low water vapor in the desert. Conversely, because the humid deep south has high levels of water vapor, daytime temperatures rarely go over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and drop to only 80 degrees at night, a difference of only 20 degrees. That represents a 25-degree difference between the deserts and the humid areas in day-night temperatures, all due to the amount of water vapor. We also see the greenhouse effect of clouds on a regular basis. The temperature may drop to 50 degrees at night when it is clear, but remains at 65 degrees at night when it's cloudy, a difference of 15 degrees or more between clear and cloudy weather. The greenhouse power of water vapor and clouds dwarfs that of carbon dioxide. And remember, only a tiny amount of the carbon dioxide greenhouse effect is caused by man.
In fact, if you wanted to categorize greenhouse gases, to paraphrase a colleague of mine, he says that greenhouse gas number 1, 2, 3, and 4 is water vapor, with carbon dioxide would be a distant 5. CO2 has an influence, but it's certainly not significant enough for us to worry about.
More likely, the warming is part of a natural cycle that has been ongoing for millennia.
The paleoclimatic data that I and others have collected, it's obvious that climate is and always has been variable. In fact, the only constant about climate is change. It changes continually.
Past climate researchers have found that over much of the world between about 1400 and in some places as late as 1900, there was a period of colder than average temperature over the world called the Little Ice Age. And before that, there was a period of unusual warmth called the Medieval Optimal, or Warm Period. So warming and cooling are part of the norm. The 20th century is not out of balance compared to the past.
So that created a very familiar curve that appeared in the early IPCC reports. And then suddenly, in 1998, a study came out, which is now referred to as the MBH 98, because the three authors' names, the first one is the one that's spoken about the most, which is Mann, published a report in which they completely rejected that widely accepted temperature graph.
The MBH98 graph became known as the hockey stick curve, where the shaft of the stick was the relatively constant lower temperatures for the first 900 years of the past millennium, and the blade of the stick the reputed sudden temperature rise of the past century. Although Mann's research was never audited, the United Nations and environmentalists promoted it as the smoking gun that recent warming was unusual. Analyst Stephen McIntyre, in cooperation with Ross McKittrick of the University of Guelph, decided to take a closer look at the data.
We carried out an analysis of the results to see what happened when we recompiled the data, and got quite different answers. Instead of having an extraordinarily high 20th century, we had a 15th century value that was just as high as the 20th century. So the hockey stick disappeared. It's a computer programming error that yields these hockey sticks. This piece of the jigsaw puzzle needs to be removed before science can develop a proper understanding of the climate history of the last millennium.
Here's a study that appeared in the world's top science journal, and yet years went by and they never noticed that the data description that accompanied the paper was wrong, that there were very important methodological issues that weren't described in the paper.
McIntyre and McKendrick noted that the graph using the corrected data could still be wrong because the methodology used in the MBH 98 was fundamentally incorrect. They wrote in geophysical research letters that, quote, the effect of the transformation is so strong that a hockey stick-shaped PC1 curve is almost always generated from a trendless red noise with the persistent properties of the North American tree ring network, unquote. In other words, when McIntyre and McKendrick analyzed random data using MBH 98 methodology, out popped a hockey stick every time. The McIntyre-McKendrick report generated so much controversy that the U.S. Congress authorized the National Academy of Sciences to study and report on the issue. The National